Hello and welcome back to the New York Young Republican Club podcast. I'm Ian McMath, your club press secretary, and happy birthday, America. Right now, the club has just wrapped up hosting our Stars, Stripes, and Summer Nights social in celebration of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. To kick off the show, first we have a special video from the White House, followed by a presidential address by Stefano Forte.
In all the chronicles of the ages, never before has any nation celebrated so magnificent a triumph as this one. We are the freest people on earth, and by the grace of God, the United States of America is the most successful, most accomplished, most exceptional nation ever to exist in human history. Liberty has prevailed here because of the culture and character of the people who declared it, defended it, and preserved it. We reach a milestone like no other, celebrate with joyful hearts and soaring spirits, because after 2.5 centuries, we know that this is not an ending. This is only the beginning of the golden age of America. Happy Independence Day to all. God bless you all. God bless you all.
My fellow Americans, my name is Stefano Forte, president of the New York Young Republican Club. Today, we celebrate the 250th anniversary of our country's independence. 2.5 centuries ago, our forefathers declared their independence from the British yoke. They wrote in the Declaration of Independence that with a firm reliance on the protection of the divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. As these immortal men signed their names, their hearts swelled with a divine courage from the supreme judge, our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. The Continental Congress chose General George Washington to lead this new nation in what looked to be certain defeat. Only through the providence of our God did we prevail in this fight. General Washington won the war not on the battlefield, but on bended knee in Valley Forge when he asked our Lord for strength. Now, on the 250th anniversary of our nation, let us remember that we are a proud, patriotic, and God-fearing people, descended from great men. A people who patriotically laid down their lives to forge a nation on this wild land. We are descended from men who manifested destiny from sea to shining sea, survived the Civil War, and overcame the old world to become the most powerful nation to ever exist. When I was young, my father would sit with me for hours under the statue of Teddy Roosevelt at the Natural History Museum and talk to me about the great history of this nation. My mother was born in Greece, but she deeply ingrained in me how lucky I am to be born in this nation, and that we are Americans before anything else. The Star-Spangled Banner waves proudly outside our family home. Now more than ever, let us reignite the flame of patriotism that yearns to burn in all of us. This Independence Day, let us recommit ourselves to teaching our children the great American story and the history they are heirs to. God bless you, God bless the New York Young Republican Club, and God bless the United States of America.
Thank you, Steph. Now let's take you to the street with James Poll, where we ask Americans what their plans are for July 4th and what it means to be here for the 250th anniversary of the founding of our country.
We're here in New York City asking people what their 4th of July plans are and what America's 250th birthday means to them.
I feel like so patriotic.
I'm so proud to be an American, so proud to be a New Yorker.
So what are your 4th of July plans?
Well, I actually already saw the Declaration of Independence at the New York Public Library. I just came from there.
I'm going out to the Hamptons, so one of my friends is nannying out in the Hamptons, so I'm going to visit her and stay with her.
What I'm going to do 4th of July, spend time with family and pop fireworks and stuff. We're here for the fireworks, maybe see some Taylor Swift.
And it's America's 250th birthday. What does that mean to you?
Oh, it's great. It means that's when our country started, and we got our freedom. That's what it's all about, living in the USA.
Who is your favorite founding father and why?
George Washington, because he was a badass.
And why is that?
He just was ready to go.
He fought in the war, he led troops, and he led the country. And he did it with dignity and respect.
George Washington, honestly, because he's the $1 bill. He's awesome.
I love Alexander Hamilton.
We've got ideologies thinking that they're going to take over this country, and the patriots of the United States of America are absolutely never going to let that happen on our watch.
I hope you enjoyed that as much as I enjoyed making it. Now, check out this message from Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, followed by the reality check with Iulia on all the current news that you need to know.
To be prepared for war is one of the most effective means of preserving peace. George Washington first said it to Congress in 1790, peace through strength. It was a message that became the foundation of our young country's identity. And now in our 250th year, this simple truth has been restored as the bedrock of our continuing American story. All of it made possible by the greatest military on the face of the earth.
Our souls are filled with gratitude for every generation of warriors who have worn the uniform all the way back to the very beginning. Thanks to their extraordinary service and devotion, 250 years later, America stands tall, America stands proud, and America stands free.
Our country stands on the shoulders of these giants. To them, thank you. And happy birthday to our great republic.
This week, the Supreme Court handed down 2 decisions that should make every American's blood boil. And they did it with exquisite timing right before we lit 851,000 fireworks over the National Mall to celebrate 250 years of this country. Happy birthday, America. Here's your deep knife wound. Let's start with birthright citizenship. The court ruled 6-3 that children born on American soil to illegal immigrants and temporary visitors are automatically American citizens, forever. No questions asked, no loyalty required, no connection to this country's history, values, or sacrifices necessary. Just show up, have a baby, and congratulations. Here's your citizenship, your Medicaid, your welfare, and your ballot when you turn 18. You're welcome. And let me be very clear about what this means in practice. So someone can get on a plane 9 months pregnant, land in, I don't know, New York, deliver a baby at a hospital that you and I are paying for, fly back home, and that child is now a lifetime US citizen who can vote in every election for the rest of their life, collect welfare, and send checks back to their third world country if they so choose to. That baby can sit on a jury when he turns 18 and sit in judgment of you and me and our loved ones. That baby can decide who our mayors are, our governors are, or our presidents. That's what the Supreme Court just upheld. That is the country we live in today. A nation is not magic dirt. It is a people bound by shared history, shared sacrifice, and shared values. The idea that just physically touching American soil is sufficient to inherit everything that was built here by generations of people who bled for it, it's not just legally wrong, it's civilizationally suicidal. Stephen Miller said it better than I ever could.
Wound in the heart of the American Republic. Look, Jesse, I can step tomorrow onto the deck of a 747. It does not mean that I am the pilot of that plane and I'm qualified to fly it. Just physically being on U.S. soil does not make you a citizen or qualified to carry on or capable of executing the inheritance of this country. We have people from all over the world, from third world nations, nations that on their own would have never invented the wheel, let alone modern technology, let alone medicine, let alone air travel. And they can just come into the country, have a baby at a hospital, paid for by you and me, and then that baby's automatically a citizen.
He's right. There's no possible reading of the 14th Amendment that applies to foreigners with foreign loyalties, foreign citizenship, and obligations, foreign everything. The 14th Amendment was written after the Civil War to protect formerly enslaved Americans, people who had been here, who had built this country with their own hands, and who are being denied rights that were rightfully theirs. It wasn't written so that third world birth tourism could become an industry, or so that, I don't know, someone could dock a cruise ship for an hour, have a baby, and produce a lifetime American citizen. If your constitutional interpretation requires you to suicide your own civilization, you're reading the Constitution wrong. No provision of the Constitution can be read to require national self-obliteration, and yet here we are. But birthright citizenship doesn't operate in isolation. You combine it with the mail-in ballot system the same court just blessed, where ballots can arrive with no hard deadline, where you don't even need to be physically present, where states like Michigan allow every registered voter to request an absentee ballot with no excuse required, and you start to see the full picture. Since I just mentioned Michigan, Trump won it over Kamala by, about 80,000 votes? And that may sound comfortable until you start thinking about what the next 20 years look like. So just think about what birthright citizenship does to that math over a generation. Someone comes here, has a baby, goes home, that child grows up abroad, probably in a country with no particular love for America, comes back at 18 with full citizenship and full voting rights. And under the mail-in system the court just protected, they don't even need to show up. They can vote from anywhere. They can live in a foreign country and cast a ballot in Michigan that cancels yours. Now, of course, some may call this a paranoid hypothetical, but I like to call it the logical end of these two Supreme Court rulings. Birthright citizenship produces the voters. Mail-in ballots harvest them. And the DSA provides the candidates they vote for. This is the play. And the Supreme Court just made sure the game continues. Now, let's talk about the mail-in ruling itself, because dear Amy Coney Barrett, the same Amy Coney Barrett that a lot of people fought very hard to get confirmed, wrote the majority opinion deciding that Election Day doesn't actually mean a day. Elections just sort of continue until someone decides they don't. She looked at the word day and decided it doesn't mean what it has meant for the entire history of this country. But think about what this means for 2028. A Democratic governor in a swing state decides the election hasn't concluded because not every ballot is in yet. No deadline, according to Barrett. So the electors don't get certified. And a state that maybe should have gone Republican just doesn't. Between these two rulings on the same week as the 250th birthday, the Supreme Court managed to dilute who gets to be an American and then make it harder to know if the Americans who vote actually decided anything. So, while the National Mall was preparing the largest fireworks display in history, the court was busy making sure fewer and fewer people in this country have any idea what they're actually celebrating. And what this all enables, because the Supreme Court ruling doesn't exist in a vacuum, but it enables people like Hassan Piker, for example, progressive streamer, one of the most influential voices on the left right now. His parents came from Turkey, they spent time here, had Hassan, raised him abroad as a committed Islamist communist, and then sent him back here with full American citizenship and full voting rights. And naturally, he is now here actively working to influence your politics and your elections. And thanks to this week's ruling, that pipeline stays wide open forever. And then there is Melat Kiros, 29 years old, democratic socialist, daughter of Ethiopian immigrants, what a shocker. She just defeated Diana DeJet, a 15-term incumbent who has been in Congress since 1997, the same year Kiros was born, in Colorado's 1st congressional district. Now, DeJet wasn't some moderate. She's a hardcore progressive, and she just got eaten alive by someone further left than she ever dreamed of being.
Do you believe that the 9/11 terrorist attacks on America were the inevitable consequence of American foreign policy?
Inevitable in the sense that we destabilized a lot of the Middle East, that forced people to believe that another act of violence was the only response. And again, just like I said before, our responsibility is to getting rid of those conditions that lead to violence in the first place.
Lovely, isn't she? And she's heading to Congress. And who was at her victory party? Of course, Hassan Piker. The anchor baby and the anchor baby candidate celebrating together. You really can't make this up. It's almost poetic. But this is not isolated. I mean, the DSA has now swept New York, Pennsylvania, Washington, D.C., Colorado. They are already planning for 2028. They are serving all 250 of their chapters about who to take back for president. And AOC is already hinting at a run, although I don't know if she's progressive enough for them. But if you think this stops here, you haven't been paying attention.
J.D. Vance just said in an interview that he thinks you are going to be the leading Democratic candidate for president in 2028. What's your response to that?
I mean, I hope he is. That's what I'll say.
So he's a Republican nominee?
Yeah.
The Supreme Court ruled that
God forbid. But it's coming. And honestly, at this point, after everything we just watched this week, can you say you're surprised? Because all of this, it's one story, and the story is about what America is, who gets to be a part of it, and who gets to decide. So what does it actually mean to be an American? Because I think that's the question underneath all of this that nobody wants to sit with. It's not just a passport. It's not being born on the right patch of ground. Being an American means inheriting something, a set of ideas, a set of sacrifices, a civic identity that was built over 250 years by people who gave everything for it. It means having a stake in whether this country survives. It means understanding what you're defending and why. You can't inherit that by landing at JFK 9 months pregnant. You can't mail it in from abroad. And you certainly can't build it by electing people who think Western civilization should be eradicated. That's what's actually at stake here. Not just some Supreme Court rulings, not just a congressional primary. The question of what America is and who gets to decide. And we've been here before. In the winter of 1777, Washington's army was at Valley Forge. They were freezing, starving. 2,000 men died that winter, not in battle, but from cold and disease. Philadelphia had fallen. Every outside observer had already written off the whole experiment. But they held anyway. By June, they marched out, disciplined and ready. We have SCOTUS rulings that gut citizenship in elections. We have communists winning congressional primaries in Colorado and New York. We have a machine that is patient and organized and absolutely not going anywhere. 250 years of this country surviving people who wanted to burn it down. I like our odds, but only if we fight. And that's the reality check with Iulia. Happy 250th, everyone. God bless America.
Thank you, Iulia. There is no other issue that gets me more worked up than immigration. Birthright citizenship? What about Americans' birthright? My birthright. I could understand the argument for it before ubiquitous, cheap, and fast travel. If there's one issue I will forever agitate for, it is getting rid of birthright citizenship and securing our borders. Now, coming up next is one of our newest productions, The Frank Forum with Frank Filicomo and Troy Olson. Next.
Welcome to the Frank Forum podcast. My name is Frank Filicomo. I am the founder and editor of thefrankforum.com. And today I'm joined by my good friend, Troy M. Olson. He's the Sergeant at Arms of the New York Young Republican Club, co-author of The Emerging Populist Majority, and I'm told also a contributor at thefrankforum.com, a site that you may have heard of.
I have heard of. I think I'm your top contributor.
When did you start writing for my site, Troy? And why? Why did you start writing for my site?
I think you invited me to write for the site. We knew one another. I want to say my first article was in 2003.
2003, I was 6 years old, so it couldn't be.
That's way off 23. That's what I meant. Wow. You know, I was thinking of 2003 is because of all of that pre-show.
Bush was in office. Yeah.
That actually is sort of a Freudian slip. That's a window into so many of our conversations about at least the more partisan ones where we talk about, you know, how much things have changed in the last 2 decades.
Yes.
And we think about that a lot. But yeah, 2023, I want to say is my first article I've written.
The inaugural year of the Frank Forum.
Yep. So top contributor, early contributor.
Yeah.
And when I say top, you still have you're beating me by a good 100.
Right.
And then some.
Well, I got to keep it going.
I'm happy with I've contributed 16 pieces, I want to say, if we're to put a number on it.
Yes.
But
one of which we're going to discuss in some detail here.
But I always tell people, not only do I enjoy writing for your site, writing for the Frank Forum has made me, I think, a better writer. I've embraced brevity. And I do enjoy that what I'm going to write and put on there is able to get on the landing page at Real Clear, which is amazing.
That's always fun.
And you know, the site's really growing, and I think that launching this podcast is a natural next step for you.
Yeah.
And so I'm happy to be a part of this. What are we going to talk about on the Frank?
To have you
what are we going to be talking about on the Frank Forum?
Well, I think that, you know, when I started the website, it was 2023. And it was right around the time that under the Biden administration, his Surgeon General, Dr. Vivek Murthy, released a very consequential advisory report declaring a loneliness epidemic. And I remember at the time, and Troy, I don't know if you remember this, but basically everyone knew this one part of the advisory report, which was that being lonely or feelings of loneliness are akin to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Loneliness is that bad for you. It leads to cognitive decline. It leads to other physiological and psychological problems. And, you know, I think when I heard that and when I read that 80-plus page report, it really moved me. And, you know, you hear all this stuff now. I mean, there's a million articles about the male loneliness epidemic or about the loneliness epidemic writ large. And it's very clear that there's a problem.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of young men, including young conservative men, a lot of them feel sort of despondent, directionless. A word that I find myself using a lot is listless. And that is to say, without any kind of clear direction. And so the purpose of the website is not to inundate readers with long form essays.
Right.
We can get that, you know, at other places.
People can get that at my Substack.
You could get that at Troy's Substack.
You can get
this is really supposed to be, more than anything, actually, yes, it's descriptive, as in we want to tell people what the problem is, and we want to talk about the diagnosis, but it's also prescriptive. And that part of what I want to do is go out there, experience community, experience being in communion, you know, with your neighbors, with your fellow countrymen, and use that as a sort of kind of medication for our current societal malady of atomization. And
boy, do we need it. You can see the effects of it all over the place. And I'm really excited. About this backdrop. I fought for it.
I know. Well, why don't you? I mean, I think that's kind of a cool thing to talk about. Why this backdrop? What does it elicit in you?
It reminds me of growing up, especially like 4th of July, summers, and walking past. It would have been my grandfather's younger sister, who had this great classic looking house at the edge of town, kind of on your way out on a county road.
Yeah.
And it had a front porch like this. And on the website, you have a link to like Front Porch Republic.
Yeah.
And
my recommended reading.
Yep.
Thank you for looking at this.
Absolutely. And I've read a few articles on there, and I'm like, well, I think so many of the civic oriented and communitarian themes and culture that you discuss and I contribute to the site, I think can be, and what we're going to try to do here can be summed up by, even though we're not literally on the set we hope to build, but two guys on, two people on some chairs, talking about the country, talking about the community, and talking and being social not being isolated.
Well, part of the reason,
and not doing it on Zoom.
Well, that's exactly it. I mean, part of the reason, maybe the reason, I started this was because there are too many people in one chair.
Yeah.
And so introducing the second chair, I think that's a lost art conversation.
Yeah.
And you were talking about this idea of the small town community and everything, and I was reminded by an article that recently went up on the site by David Churchill Barrow, first time contributor, and this description of his town in New England is beautiful, and I'm just going to read it very briefly. He says, "It was a crops farm upon a few dozen acres of upland surrounded by swamp." And then he goes, "Yes, I am a genuine swamp Yankee. In a little New England town that made Andy Griffith's Mayberry look like Manhattan.
Wow.
My mother died when I was 2, and when my World War II Marine father looked at me, he may have seen a glimpse of my mother. He seldom raised his voice to me, let alone spank me, in the days when most children were spanked. When I was 12, he built a little cabin in the woods behind our house for me and my friends so I could grow up carefree." And then he grows up to talk about, this part's great. He goes, "Folks would give us kids a ride if they saw us walking somewhere, and the nurse who lived across the cornfield would patch up my inevitable cuts and bumps. I was raised to call our closest neighbors Aunt Betty and Uncle Joe." This is an America that, a lot of us, including I'm sure most of the people watching this, are probably working remote jobs in their studio apartments. I'm kind of projecting a little bit because this is my situation. But and that is an atomized existence. It is an existence that is far removed from the Tocquevillian understanding of America in the 1830s. And so, look, if you're living in Brooklyn or if you're living in a major city, can you just have a front porch and do this kind of beautiful thing that's described here in this New England town? It's like, no, you can't do that. But what you can do is work with what you have. And a big part of working with what you have is, first of all, you have to leave the front door, which is a hard first step for a lot of people. And you have to do things like join the New York Young Republican Club or the, whatever, the Rotary Club or the Knights of Columbus, or maybe just 2 blocks away from me, there's an open mic that I go to every Thursday. So we have to push ourselves to engage in conversation and to engage in community with other people.
And this piece, which I think is beautiful, is called I Was Raised in Tocqueville. And the photograph on the piece is a Rockwell painting. And that's kind of segues to my upbringing. I always tell people I grew up in a Norman Rockwell painting, and it wasn't a small New England town. It was a small Midwestern town in Minnesota that was surrounded by a rural area, but the town was just big enough to not be totally bored. So it was like, it was 8,000, 9,000, 10,000. And there was a lot of, it felt like a busy hub in the summer because we were surrounded by lakes area. It was like 10,000 lakes, more than 10,000 lakes in Minnesota. And so there was always a lot to do, actually. So it recreated some of the busyness of a bigger community. But at the end of the day, especially for 9 months of the year, it was definitely a small town vibe. But I grew up on front porches listening to older adults talk endlessly about American history, the war years, the post-war years, old baseball teams. And it was usually my father and his cousins, which were all older than him. And it was, or I'd be listening to a generation even older than that when I was a really little kid. And so these were the children of the Great Depression. And of course their father, which would be my great grandfather, he died at the age of 39 and he had 8 children. And this was in late 1920s. So Great Depression hits just after that. And so I learned so much about life before I had really even seen the world, just by sitting there and listening to them. And I know that might sound shocking, me just sitting there listening to other people talk, because now I drone on and I never
Troy,
I never shut up. But so I mean, that's kind of the segue there, and that's why that that terminology and that metaphorical way to describe, I think, a lot of the themes that the site is about and that you write about and I contribute to. When I write on there, I thought it was a good title and a good
what you're describing to me is small c conservatism, properly understood, and a lot of my gripe, especially with the sort of 20th century recreation of the GOP in the more libertarian vein, is I feel like the term conservatism has sort of been hijacked in a way. And what you have is you have people who, they fly the "Don't Tread on Me" flag, which to me is an anti-community flag. I understand. I mean, that temperament is kind of baked into a lot of Americans. But to me, Americanism and conservatism is about understanding that you are not the end-all be-all. There is something greater than just ourselves. There is you're part of a lineage. Yoram Hazony, in his book, which I encourage everyone to read, it's called Conservatism, a Rediscovery. He talks about this term that I love, historical empiricism. And what historical empiricism means is that we are not what the Enlightenment thinkers imagine that we would be, which is these kind of always calculating, rationalist, homo economicus kind of people. It's like, no, we are a product of a bigger picture that involves our father and our grandfather and our great-grandfather. And all of those trials and tribulations throughout the ages, that's what governs us. It's not pure on, real-time calculations that govern us. It's listening to your grandfather's stories and all these things. So part of my sort of crusade, so to speak, has been talking to these more libertarian-oriented people and saying, listen, I understand the proclivity to, my gun and my property and all of that I agree with too. But there also has to be a temperament in conservatives to say that while all of these amendments are super important and while individual autonomy is super important, there also has to be an emphasis on what the late sociologist Amitai Etzioni called communitarianism. And I'll just say very briefly that I've said this word in front of some of my libertarian colleagues, former colleagues, and they've said, I don't know, you're sounding kind of like a communist. And I say to them, no.
And that's the knee jerk.
Here's the difference, right? Communism is top-down state coercion. That's what it is. There is no freedom of the individual in communism. What this is it's a balance. It's a balance between individual liberties and autonomy, but also order and belonging in a community. Does that? Are you understanding what I'm getting at?
It's absolutely critical because, and this is why I always, if you look at, any mention of an ism in my ex bio or any of those bios, I use the word Americanism.
Americanism,
and I am someone that thinks that, even if we just take I'll just say the eras rather than the presidents, but I happen to think that even though Democrats held Congress, I believe the era of Eisenhower as president in the 50s was a more small c conservative America than the Reaganite 1980s. And I don't mean that to, say that Eisenhower was more conservative than Reagan necessarily, but I guess what I mean by that is we don't merely get a lot of what we are just from who's president. That marks the story and gives us a reference point. Like who won the World Series that year? And we're intensely political country, and we debate these issues for decades, really. And they've been with us a lot longer than we think. And a lot of things that we call new are really just recreations of prior eras and conversations. But I really do believe that, the America that I'm searching for, even living here in New York City, which I think, we're obviously we're not gonna have this front porch necessarily. The local zoning laws would not agree with that. But what we do need to recreate it in the space that we do inhabit. And I actually think what drives a lot of, for anyone who has that knee-jerk reaction, what I'd say to them is, hey, you and I both share a dislike of this lurch to socialism,
right?
And radical, basically communists saying there shouldn't be private property. You basically have a mayor of New York City, the greatest city in America, saying these things. And
are you not feeling the warmth?
I am not feeling the warmth of collectivism, but I am feeling the warmth of offering the people that fall for that a real choice, rather than something that I know and history says won't work for them. I do want them to be happy and pursue happiness and pursue the American dream, and however they feel they can reach that. I think a small C conservatism, a more communitarian rather than a libertarian Republican Party, and I guess the word that I might use for it historically is I've said the word populism a lot.
Sure.
But I think there's some crossover between some of these ideas.
Yeah.
But in the specific context of your site and what we're going to talk about, what I like about writing for your site is it's when I get to write about culture.
Yes.
And sometimes I'll mix in family, as where when I write on my Substack, it's a longer piece and I'm way too into the horse race.
Right.
I'm the guy that predicted the 24 election 312. So I'm diving into that strength, or, here's what I think where we're sitting and here's where we're at. Maybe I'm talking about public policy.
Presidents will come and go, but our families will live on.
Yeah. I got a lot more joy technically out of writing this piece here than most other pieces I write. And so, that's what I like about, and that's why, like, when you reached out to me and said, I'd like to enter a podcast portion to the site, and I said, well, I've got an idea for you.
I think there's a need for it. And honestly, I mean, you mentioned Mayor Mamdani, who I did not vote for, but the reason I strongly believe that the reason people voted for Mamdani, the reason people in large numbers voted for Bernie Sanders during the primaries, and the reason people voted in some cases thrice for Donald Trump, I think is because there is a collective yearning for a sense of belonging in America. Tim Carney wrote a book that I reference a lot. It's called Alienated America.
Yeah.
And what he found is that a lot of Americans, especially in the states that Trump won big, in the flyover states or the Rust Belt, they felt a sort of despondency, like the elites are more concerned about free trade or sort of global projects than about them. And so they voted for something different. And so Mamdani, in a weird way, although I think he's a negative manifestation of this, is a bull in the china shop in the same way that Donald Trump is a bull in the china shop. And all of this, again, I think is a projection of this sort of, there's something not fulfilled about how a lot of people, especially young people in America, are living their lives today. It's like being an individual in an apartment ordering DoorDash and watching the Kardashians or whatever on Netflix is just not a very fulfilling existence. And so if people could take the conservatism, small c conservatism that we're talking about, which is a return to tradition, a return to Tocqueville, a return to knowing who the hell our neighbors are. I think that is the prescription.
I agree.
For America going another 250 years.
Absolutely. And from those little platoons, we will get to a place where we feel like we have a monoculture, monoculture again. That was maybe a inarticulate way to try to transition.
Are you referencing
to this other,
perhaps this article that you wrote for the frankforum.com?
I did,
which is a great article, and it's so true, because I mean, I think the main point, and you could correct me, the main point of your article is that we used to basically all get each other's references, because we were watching the same things, and like there were 3 or 4 channels. Today, everything is so decentralized. Everyone's kind of in their own silo. I mean, how many views did the Seinfeld finale get? It was
I talk about that in there.
76 million viewers.
Right.
And then you say that the next best thing in sort of modern day to that was the Game of Thrones
it
finale,
seemed like a tentpole.
13 million.
Which is nothing.
So
I mean, it's impressive only in the context of its time.
So you're saying that we have a lot less of a common culture, which is sort of a terrible black pill.
Yeah.
But also true.
This is me being, I try to be optimistic, but this is probably one of the pieces that, I don't know if it's even a black pill. There were two things
It's a
going.
reality pill.
Yeah, it was. There were two things going on that had just happened, and for different generations, that I used as the jumping off point to write the final days of the American monoculture, which is why do you even say it like that? Final days, if we're saying it's already gone. Well, no, we have the residue of that monoculture, people that everyone knows and loves, and then they'll come to the end of their lives, they'll die.
Right.
The Beatles, we all love the Beatles in America. And a few years ago, the last Beatles song came out.
Yeah.
And then that video, we have the two living Beatles next to the two that are dead. It's a beautiful song, beautiful video. And so if you're like a baby boomer, or even older, that gets right to your heart.
Yeah.
And then so let's go younger to let's say Gen X and millennial era. I mean, why I really believe that Seinfeld and especially Friends is why so many transplants moved here. At least
it was a very romantic view of living in the city.
The pitch of the Friends is the time in your life where your friends are your family.
That's right.
Okay. So that's not just a very powerful notion, but that's actually what New York City was in the 90s too. And they had experienced it and they wrote about it. And that's why it meant something. But so Friends, obviously Matthew Perry died. Tragically too young. And so the other one I'm noticing, I love the Beatles, so it's sad for me, but I'm mostly noticing it in those who are older and reading like their comments and watching that. But with the Friends thing, I got to experience a little bit more personally in that, I was a Friends watcher. And what a sad thing, but I couldn't help but notice one of the reasons that this was hitting so deeply is that these are common cultural reference points.
Everybody knows Friends.
Yeah.
Everybody knows Raymond.
Yeah, everybody knows Raymond. Sometimes you want to go where everybody knows your name. Cheers.
That's right. And then, we could just keep doing
we could keep doing this.
Yeah.
But so I'll read just one piece from it.
Back when everyone was all in the family.
Yeah, so I went through all of that, and I talked about that as the window into it, and then I'll end with how it ends, and please read these and others on the Frank Forum, and you can find the Frank Forum at frankforum.com, right?
Thefrankforum.com. Yeah.
So the American monoculture, which I bolded at the end, could it be any more dead?
Right.
That was me.
Which you have to say in the right affect.
Could it be any more dead?
Right.
So that's me doing a Chandler Bing. And I went on, perhaps this deep down is what we're mourning every time the last vestiges of a common people and culture slip away. And setting aside that analysis, it appears even more certain that this is what we're trying to find again as this century begins to come into shape and form. A post-American world need not be a post-American country, culture, and people too. Right. So I end actually with a glint of hope and optimism.
Which is a kind of through line on my website.
Yeah.
It is not, Doomer City.
Right.
And I think, but, the whole article is so true. And, you see someone with a Pink Floyd t-shirt and you go, oh, yeah, we all know Pink Floyd. Or you see a Nirvana, Nevermind, and you go, oh, yeah, we all know what that is. Or we all know Friends and Seinfeld.
Yeah.
But in the last 10 years, is there a band that we all listen to and go crazy for? It's like, not really. But the unfortunate reality is that you can't fabricate that back into existence.
No.
And so the best thing to do, and this is where, some of these cultural renewal conversations hit a wall.
Yeah.
You can't will this into existence. The only thing that you have control over is your life.
Yep.
And what you can do to give it meaning. And so I think we could probably get more into that in following episodes.
I think so too.
Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
I could listen to Frank and Troy talk for hours. Finally, enjoy this excellent piece by HUD Secretary Scott Turner featuring George Washington and his legendary estate, Mount Vernon, coming up right now.
First in war, first in peace, and first in the hearts of his countrymen. These words, written after George Washington's death in 1799, still capture what he means to the American story. He was the soldier who held a desperate army together. He was the statesman who helped guide a fragile republic into being. And he was the president who showed the world that true greatness is not found in seizing power, but in knowing when to lay it down. Washington's courage, integrity, and self-command inspired the Continental Army through British bullets, winter hunger, exhaustion, and doubt. Against overwhelming odds, he led a newborn nation to victory. After winning independence in war, he helped safeguard it into peace. He presided over the Constitutional Convention, where the framework of the United States was forged, and then became the nation's first president. Yet through all the honors, burdens, and triumphs of public life, there was one place Washington longed for above all others, Mount Vernon. He once wrote, "I had rather be on my farm than be an emperor of the world." For Washington, Mount Vernon was more than a residence. It was his refuge, his ambition, his responsibility, and a place where the public man returned to become himself again. Set along the Potomac River in Fairfax County, Virginia, Mount Vernon began not as a grand mansion, but as a modest family home. The original house was built in 1734 by Washington's father, Augustine Washington. George Washington began managing the estate in 1754, and over the next 45 years, he slowly transformed it into one of the most recognizable homes in America. When Washington first took charge, Mount Vernon was roughly 2,100-acre estate, with a house of about 3,500 square feet. By the end of his life, the estate had grown to about 7,600 acres, and the mansion had expanded to nearly 11,000 square feet. The house itself grew with Washington. He added a full second story, expanded the wings, and shaped the mansion into a grand Virginia estate. Though made of wood, the exterior was crafted to resemble cut stone through a technique known as rustication. It gave the home the dignity and presence of a stone mansion, while reflecting Washington's practical eye for economy and design. Mount Vernon was beautiful, but it was never merely decorative. It was a working estate, a place of management, hospitality, labor, and vision. Even while leading troops during the Revolutionary War, Washington wrote home with instruction about crops, trees, repairs, and the care of the estate. His mind was often on Mount Vernon, even when history had called him far away. And he was away often. During the 8 years of the Revolutionary War, Washington saw Mount Vernon only once. During his presidency, he also had few chances to return. Still, the home remained close to his heart. It was the place he hoped for, planned for, and dreamed of returning to. Mount Vernon reflects Washington's life because it carries both sides of his character, the man of public duty and the man of private discipline. The new room, occupying the mansion's north wing, reveals Washington as host, leader, and gentleman of the new republic. This was one of the largest rooms in the house, larger than many neighboring homes of the time. It served as a dining room, gathering place, and picture gallery, with paintings and engravings that spoke to Washington's taste, learning, and the place in the world. Here, guests were welcomed into the home of the man who had led the revolution and then led the nation. After the war, visitors came constantly to Mount Vernon. Some were friends, some were admirers, some simply wanted to stand in the presence of the man who had become a living symbol of American independence. Washington and Martha received them with dignity and grace, though the burden of hospitality was often heavy. Yet beyond the public rooms, Mount Vernon also reveals a more private Washington. The bedchamber of George and Martha is where they would both start and end their day in prayer, with a chair dedicated to kneeling before God as they were both steadfast in their devotion. Not only did this godly couple take to heart Jesus' command to pray in private, but they even had a dedicated room with a spot for it. This steadfast dedication was carried over into the study where Washington would have likely read from some of his favorite influences, including Jonathan Wesley, the King James Bible, and the Book of Common Prayer. His study was the command center for the estate. From this room, he answered letters, managed accounts, read, planned improvements, and oversaw the daily life of Mount Vernon. It was one of the few spaces where he could withdraw from the demands of visitors and public expectation. This room was his sanctuary. Here, surrounded by books, papers, maps, and instruments of work, Washington could return to the habits that shaped him: order, discipline, reflection, and responsibility. The same qualities that helped him lead an army and govern a nation were practiced here in quieter form. Outside, the piazza opened toward the Potomac River, which Washington admired deeply. From there, guests could feel the breeze of the water and look across a view that seemed to stretch beyond the burdens of politics and war. For Washington, the landscape was not an escape from responsibility, but a reminder of what that responsibility was meant to protect: home, peace, inheritance, and the promise of a free people. But Mount Vernon also carries a harder part of the American story. For all its beauty, the estate was also a plantation where hundreds of enslaved men, women, and children lived and labored in bondage. At the time of Washington's death, more than 300 enslaved people lived at Mount Vernon, though Washington personally owned 123 of them. Others were connected to the estate through Martha Washington's first husband, estate, or through other arrangements. As a young Virginia planter, Washington accepted slavery as part of the world he inherited. But over time, especially after a war fought in the name of liberty, he began to wrestle with this contradiction. He did not end the institution in his lifetime, and the lives of those enslaved at Mount Vernon remain an essential part of the estate's history. Yet in his will, Washington ordered that the enslaved people he personally owned be freed after Martha Washington's death. This decision did not undo the injustice of slavery, but it remains one of the clearest signs that Washington understood, however imperfectly, the moral tension between the ideals of revolution and the reality of bondage at his own home. Mount Vernon, then, is not only a monument to Washington's greatness, it is a place where the full weight of history can be felt: triumph and contradiction, liberty and labor, public virtue and private struggle. Washington did not want to be separated from Mount Vernon even in death. Though Congress wished for his remains to rest in the Capitol, his will directed that his final resting place be at the home he loved. That choice tells us something essential about him. George Washington reached the heights of fame and power, but he never saw power as his final home. Again and again, he returned his thoughts to Mount Vernon, to its fields, its rooms, its river view, and the ordered life he hoped to enjoy there. When King George III heard that Washington planned to resign his command after the Revolutionary War and return home, he is said to have remarked that if Washington did so, he would be the greatest man in the world. And that is what Washington did. He was a man who could have been king. Instead, he gave up power and returned to Mount Vernon. In doing so, he gained a title greater than any monarch could bestow: Father of his country. George Washington's favorite verse laid the foundation for his life in public and his estate. Everyone will sit under their own vine and under their own fig tree, and no one will make them afraid, for the Lord Almighty has spoken. Micah 4:4. Mount Vernon remains because Washington built his house and his country on a cornerstone of faith. It is the home of a soldier, a farmer, a president, and a man of God who understood that the strength of a republic depends not only on those willing to lead, but on those willing to fear the Lord.
Thank you for watching the New York Young Republican Club podcast. If you haven't already, please like, subscribe, and join the NYYRC. You can live anywhere in the world and be a member. And a final reminder to buy your gala tickets for the 114th annual gala coming up on December 12th. Early bird pricing will go away soon, so lock in your tickets now because the price will only go up. And trust me, I've seen a lot of people wait till the last minute, and it's a little painful. So don't be one of them. And I'm sending you off with a clip from yesterday's fireworks at the National Mall. Thanks for watching, and good night.